Hey, welcome to Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. We are here, and seems like we're almost past the winter in the Northeast, although it was snowing yesterday. So I guess some nice weather is coming, but we are still going through Judges on Wednesday night. So appreciate you stopping in and taking some time to relax for a few minutes and look at God's word during the week. Hopefully you get some encouragement, some accountability, some teaching, some challenging, and that's why we do what we do. So we have been in the story of Samson, and we're on our third week of looking at Samson. Has to be one of the most colorful characters in the Bible. The story of Samson is a tale about the weak becoming strong and then the strong becoming weak. May come as a surprise to many of you, but Samson reminds me a lot of myself. Not for the reasons you might think, but because Samson's greatest enemy is himself. He has a virus. His problem is not that he doesn't have the physical strength to deliver Israel. The problem is that he's internally weak. He has a virus that sabotages him and turns his strength into destruction. And that's why I feel like Samson at times. Do you ever look at chapters of your life and say, look at what I messed up. Like, why couldn't I have just controlled myself or just held my tongue or not said that? What if I had just said no or not returned that call or that email or not hung out with that person or just stayed home that night? I want to show you tonight that every morning when you wake up and look in the mirror, you look at the greatest enemy to both yourself and what God wants to do through you and your family. The problem is not that God's power isn't abundantly available to you and I. The problem is that you and I are our own worst enemies. Specifically today, I want to challenge the guys. Honestly, there may be nothing more important than many of you ever hear. God's given you a lot of opportunity and a lot of strength, which maybe you've sabotaged or are sabotaging in your life. But ladies, this story doesn't leave you out either. Old Testament scholars point out that Samson was supposed to represent all of Israel. And the author of Judges definitely points out a parallel between Samson and Israel. Both were brought into the world through a miraculous birth to an older couple, right? Abraham and Sarah, the founding father of the Israelite nation, and then Manoah and his unnamed wife, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, where Samson came from. For both, God took something weak and made it incredibly strong. Both were given a special code, a law, that was supposed to separate them from other people. The Nazirite vow, right, for Samson, don't cut your hair, don't touch a drink from the vine, and don't touch anything dead. And then rules, those weren't rules for all of Israel, those are rules for Samson to set him apart. And then the laws in Leviticus were to separate the Israelite nation from the nations around them. Samson was drawn to foreign women, just like Israel was drawn to foreign gods. So Samson's story tells Israel's story. And if you listen, there's probably a bit of your story in there as well. So last week we looked at Samson's birth. This week we're going to look at his life, and next week his death. If you haven't already, scroll to Judges 14. Maybe you're looking at this at your phone, so you're going to have to trust me. Read Judges 14 later. First story of Samson's adult life opens up with him informing mom and dad that he wants to marry a hot Philistine girl that he's seen in town. So verse 3 says, but his father and mother said to him, is there not a woman among the daughters of your relatives or among all our people that you must go to take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? This is not racial prejudice, just that they want somebody who shares his faith. But Samson said to his father, get her for me, for she's right in my own eyes. She pleases me. If we had to boil down all of Samson's weaknesses into one statement, this would be it. Samson's primary driver in life is that he does what pleases him. He's not going to let anybody get in the way of what he wants. He's always going to follow his heart or be true to himself. And no amount of wisdom from his parents or even God will get in the way of what he wants. It's like a Disney movie in reverse. He rejects his parents' wisdom, lets his heart decide, except this story shows you where that way of living generally leads. Being true to yourself is not a happily ever after ending. Verse 4 makes a little comment that lets you see the bigger picture of what God's doing in this. His mother and father did not know that it was from the Lord, for he was seeking an opportunity against the Philistines. What does this mean? God was behind this decision? That doesn't mean that Samson's decision was righteous or wise, because it clearly wasn't. just that God was going to use it. So let's look at the bigger picture of what's happened in Israel. Israel has grown really comfortable in their captivity. They weren't crying out for deliverance. They don't even want to be delivered anymore. This is the greatest threat they've ever faced: elimination, not by extermination, but by assimilation. And this will always be the biggest threat to the people of God. When the enemy comes against God's people to exterminate us, we usually rally ourselves. We put our faith in God, and he comes in on our behalf. But when the enemy makes us comfortable in the world, he starts enticing our hearts away from God. He causes us to be attracted to and assimilate with our culture, and it's destructive. And that's where Israel is. But God didn't save his people just to keep them alive. He saved them for him so that they could be consumed in love with him. And now they're about to lose that because they're so comfortable in captivity to the Philistines. So what God needs to do is stir up some conflict. Enter Samson, a hot-blooded, testosterone-ridden, impulsive meathead on roid rage. Before I move on from this, see how God sometimes does that in your life. Your heart gets way too knit to this world, too enticed by popularity or comfort or money. And so God stirs up some trouble. And this is what he does. And this is his mercy in keeping you from being too comfortable in the land of the Philistines. People have asked me over the years how I feel about Supreme Court decisions that conflict with my faith. I think there's no question that doing things like not protecting the sanctity of human life is incorrect. It's wrong. But I also recognize that God can use decisions like that to purify and strengthen the church. See, I think believers have grown entirely too at home in this country. When I say God and country, the first country you should think of is your heavenly one. When I say be thankful for freedom, the first freedom we should follow our knees and celebrate is our freedom in Jesus. So God sends stuff like this along to remind us who we belong to and where our real country is, that our main help doesn't come from Washington, D.C. It comes from the Lord. You can be assured, just like with Samson, there's not one stray molecule in all the universe that God is not using for the completion of his purposes in the church and in this world. Hollywood's not the center of things. Wall Street, Washington, none of these things dictate history or the future. God's using everything to prepare his people and his church. So the next episode in the Samson story is the lion and honey incident we talked about last week. It goes like this quickly. Samson throws a keg party to celebrate his engagement. A few days before the party, a lion attacks him, and we have that great line. He tore the lion in pieces as one tears a young goat, Judges 14:6, thrown on a t-shirt. Evidently, goat tearing was common in those days. He did that in game night in ancient Israel. What'd you do for the fourth? Hey, all the usual. Played some cornhole, set off some fireworks, tore a few goats. He tears the lion, and a few days later, he's passing by the same spot, and he sees the carcass of the lion he killed and notices a beehive in the abdomen, which sparks an idea for a riddle. It says to the Philistines, hey, if you can figure out this riddle within 7 days, I'll give you each a suit of clothes. But if you can't figure it out, you each have to give me a suit of clothes. And the riddle went like this. Out of the eater comes something sweet. Out of the strong came something to eat. And he's obviously talking about the honey that came from the abdomen of the lion. Now, what do you think about this? There's no one that possibly could have known the answer to this riddle except for Samson. So they had no choice but to try to get the answer some other way. They try to figure it out. I don't know why they spend a lot of time trying to figure it out, but they go to his bride-to-be, and they're like, hey, you don't get Samson to tell you his answer to his riddle and then tell us, we're going to kill you. So she goes to Samson, asks. He won't tell her. She cries, says, you don't love me. We're starting our marriage with secrets. I'm going to take you on a talk show. So finally, Samson caves, reveals the riddle to her. She tells the Philistines. They solve it. And Samson, the hopeless romantic, says in verse 18, if you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have found out my riddle. What a way with words that guy had. The Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him. He went down to Ashkelon, struck down the 30 men of the town, took their spoil, and gave the garments to those who had told the riddle. In hot anger, he went back to his father's house, and Samson's wife was given to his companion, who had been his best man. Question, why would God fill Samson with his spirit to do something petty and vindictive? Answer, because God has a bigger purpose. He's creating division between Israel and the Philistines. So even though Samson's being sinful, God's using it for his purposes. Then we get to chapter 15. After some days, at the time of wheat harvest, Samson went to visit his wife with a young goat. He said, I'll go into my wife in the chamber. bring your own goat, for date night. You get together, tear some young goats together. But her father would not allow him to go in. Father said, I really thought that you utterly hated her, so I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister more beautiful than she? Please take her instead. What? Samson said to them, this time I shall be innocent in regard to the Philistines when I do them harm. So the first time, he knew he was being petty and vindictive, but this time he feels justified in what he's doing. So Samson went, verse 4, caught 300 foxes, which begs the question, how? Took torches, turned them tail to tail, and put a torch in between each pair of tails. And when he had set fire to the torches, he let the foxes go into the standing grain of the Philistines, set fire to the stacked grain and standing grain, as well as the olive orchard. As far as practical jokes go, this one is crazy. He ties foxes together, lights their tails on fire, and has them go burn Samson was here into the cornfields. All awesome until the Philistines retaliate by killing his old fiancée and her father. Verse 7, Samson said to them, if this is what you do, I swear I will be avenged on you, and after that I will quit. And he struck them hip and thigh with a great blow. Hip and thigh is the Hebrew way of saying he whooped them. Then he went down and stayed in the cleft of the rock of Etam, a small Israelite outpost. Verse 10, men of Judah come to him and say, why have you come up against us? They said, we've come up to bind Samson, to do to him as he did to us. His own people, 3,000 men of Judah, went down to the cleft of the rock of Etam and said to Samson, do you not know that the Philistines are rulers over us? What is this that you've done to us? They don't want deliverance. They want peace. They aren't looking to stir up trouble. They're comfortable in their captivity. And he said to them, as they did to me, so I have done to them. They said to him, we've come down to bind you so that we may give you into the hands of the Philistines. Samson said to them, swear to me that you will not attack me yourselves. They said, no, we will only bind you and give you into their hands. We will surely not kill you. That's nice of them. So they bound him with 2 new ropes, brought him up from the rock. When he came to Lehi, the Philistines were shouting to meet him. The Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him. The ropes on his arms became as flax that caught fire. The bonds melted off his hands. He found a fresh jawbone of a donkey, put his hand out, took it, and with it he struck 1,000 men. The whole hip and thigh thing did it on him. Pretty cool, except that he's not supposed to be touching anything dead. And Samson said, with the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps, with the jawbone of a donkey, I have struck down 1,000 men. As soon as he finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone out of his hand. Kind of cool. With the jawbone of the donkey still in his hand, he composes a song. It doesn't rhyme in English, but it did in Hebrew. So you kind of have to read it more like a rap. And he drops the jawbone like he's dropping the mic and walks off. Chapter 16. Samson went to Gaza, and there he saw a prostitute and went into her. Now he's not just with a Philistine girl, but he's with a Philistine prostitute. And Gaza, by the way, is the Philistine capital. His sin is getting even more brazen. Philistines find out. They surrounded the place. They set an ambush for him all night at the gate of the city. They kept quiet all night, saying, let us wait until the light of the morning, then we will kill him. But Samson lay until midnight, and at midnight he arose and took hold of the doors of the gate of the city and the 2 posts, pulled them up, bar and all, and put them on his shoulders and carried them to the top of the hill that's in front of Hebron. What lesson is here for us? Nothing. That's just a kind of a cool story. He ripped the city gate up and carried it a half a mile to the top of a hill. When that happens, you got to write it down. Verse 4. After this, he loved a woman whose name was Delilah. In Hebrew, Delilah sounds like the phrase nighttime or the night. And if you go back through the opening verses of the chapter, the word night keeps recurring. Night in Hebrew literature represents darkness. Now Samson is lying down in the bed of the darkness. This is not good for him. Lords of the Philistines came up to her. Delilah said, seduce him, see where his great strength lies, and by what means we may overpower him, that we may bind him to humble him, and we'll each give you 1,100 pieces of silver. So Delilah says to Samson, please tell me where your great strength lies and how you might be bound, that one could subdue you. Samson said to her, if they bind me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, then I will become weak and be like any other man. So he lets her bind him with these bowstrings. Now she had men lying in ambush in an inner chamber. So the Philistines are upon you, Samson. But he snapped the bowstrings. He might as well have been wrapped with toilet paper. Verse 10, then Delilah said to Samson, behold, you mocked me and told me lies. Please tell me how you might be bound. I don't know what's wrong with him. I don't know how in his mind. He's like, why would she want the secret of my strength? I don't know that the strength was in his mind. Physical strength, not mental strength. So he said, okay, it's actually new ropes. So then she ties him up again. That says, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. Snaps the ropes off his arms like a thread. Same deal. Don't mock me. He said, hey, if you weave the 7 locks of my head with a web and fasten it with a pin, I shall become weak and like any man. Now we're getting closer. Now he's talking about his hair. So again, she does it, weaves his hair into a loom, wakes him up, says the Philistines are upon you, wakes up with a start, rips off the entire loom and is swinging it around saying, where are they? She said to him, how can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? You've mocked me these 3 times, not told me where your great strength lies. And she pressed him hard with her words day after day and urged him. His soul was vexed to death. Hasn't been Samson burned by this before? Why on earth would he tell her? Guys are stupid sometimes. He doesn't have the strength to withstand her displeasure. Guys want harmony in their homes sometimes, and that's good. But sometimes they want it so badly they'll cave when they shouldn't. Verse 17. And he told her all his heart and said to her, a razor has never come upon my head. For I've been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. If my head is shaved, then my strength will leave me, and I will become weak and be like any other man. Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, called the lords of the Philistines, saying, come up again, for he has told me the truth. Lords of the Philistines came up, brought the money. She made him sleep on her knees. See how overconfident he's grown? He has just told her the secret to his strength, and then he falls asleep in her lap. No worries, comfortable. He's confident that his strength will never leave him. God's about to wake him up. So she called the man, had him shave off the 7 locks of his head. Said, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. He woke from his sleep. He said, I will go out as at other times and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. Like Israel, he didn't know he needed deliverance, that he was out of fellowship with God. Philistines seized him. They gouged out his eyes. Actually, they probably would have first burned his eyes out with a heated metal prong and then dug out whatever remained. Fun fact. Brought him down to Gaza, bound him with bronze shackles, and he ground at the mill in the prison. Samson gives you a picture of the trajectory of sin. It starts out fun. It's like the old country preacher said, anybody who tells you sin ain't fun ain't doing it right. It just doesn't end that way. Starts with keg parties and riddles and strength and Delilah, and ends with somebody blinded in darkness, in captivity, with the monotony of grinding day after day after day. That's where sin leads. You know what? Maybe you shouldn't let your heart decide. Again, let's learn from Samson. Let's let Samson pay the learning tax so that we don't have to relive these things. Stay close to God, stay close to community, stay accountable, stay learning. We fight sin, right? And this is one of the many reasons that we do this on Wednesday night and midweek. It's one of the reasons that we get together for small groups, for discipleship groups on Sunday morning. We need the encouragement and the accountability that community provides. We're not meant to live out the Bible on our own, on an island. We're meant to do it in the context of community. So I'm glad God has given us such a great community, a great network of pastors and churches in our area. And we are excited as a Brookridge family to get back into Daniel for this Sunday. So I hope you have a great rest of your week. We're praying for you.